A letter to Dennis Prager. November 3, 2024. Dear Dennis Prager, this letter is a response to your 13-themed letter you wrote to Candace Owens, implying and insinuating that she, whether consciously or otherwise, is perhaps an anti-Semite, or at least has demonstrated tendencies towards it. This humble letter of mine summarizes your conclusions about Candace, howbeit erroneous, and to draw your attention to some rational facts and truth that might help change your mind going forward. I begin with this. I believe that your verdict on Candace was a great leap on your part, a leap out of sheer predilection to defend your tribe. As a distant admirer of your work, I have listened to all your podcasts on Apple. I have watched almost every video of yours on YouTube and Facebook, and I have read almost every one of your weekly columns. I am therefore convinced that I also can have many things to say to you and about you, good and bad, if we were to play this labeling game. How could Candace Owens be an anti-Semite for expressing dissatisfaction over thousands of babies murdered in Gaza, and over the inhumane treatment that the people of Gaza have been subjected to by Israel since October 7, 2024? I am told that Candace Owens has dated a Jew before. I stand to be corrected. This is a woman whose career perhaps began working for Jews and Jewish organizations, including your organization, PragerU, and the Daily Wire. She also worked with Charlie Kirk in debating and advancing the cause of Israel on American college and university campuses. How could an ardent lover of Israel and Jews suddenly be a hater of Jews just for expressing disagreement over the recent policies of the State of Israel concerning the bloodshed in Gaza? Candace has traveled to Israel more than once, yet you believe that she suddenly doesn't want the State of Israel to exist any longer, and that she's calling for its extermination? How did you put two and two together to get there? When October 7th occurred, many people around the world, especially in the Western world, including myself, all supported Israel and the IDF's cause to obliterate Hamas. Oh yes, I was not ready to listen to any counter-perspective, because I knew damn well that what Hamas did was despicable. If I had more money, I would have donated to the IDF in their fight against Hamas. As a Christian, of course my entrenched theological position and fiery love instincts drilled into me by my Church for Israel suddenly got provoked and yearned for revenge. I posted on all my social media handles in the defense of Israel and for the chastisement of all those who supported this barbaric terrorist group called Hamas. In my eyes then, it was a terrorist group. I posted similar stuff on LinkedIn, and that cost me an impending job interview and some connections, yet that didn't deter or bother me in the least. All I cared about was for Hamas to be defeated. So I have suffered for Israel's sake in my own small way. So why then have I, and many others like Candace Owens, changed our minds on our support for Israel in this war at Gaza? I can only speak for myself, but I am very sure that a common denominator will run through the hearts and minds of all those who have withheld or declined their support of Israel, and that common denominator is that the bloodshed in Gaza is too much. It's insane. I am told Hamas murdered about 12,000 Jews, a figure that was later reduced to 11,000-ish. But how much has Israel killed now? And how many are babies and children? This is why people no longer wants to support Israel. This is why I went back to delete all those harsh comments I posted on social media for the defense of Israel. I was justified posting them then, but not now. This is why people like Candace, and many more, have been cold. And they're right. And for you to call all these people anti-Semites for refusing to support Israel unconditionally, is frightening. Unconditional love for Israel? Dear Mr. Prager, I have you on record for saying that you don't believe in unconditional love. You have said it many times that you don't even believe God loves humanity unconditionally, a theological concept you strongly frown upon and disagree with Christians about. That is why you strongly advocate that love must be earned, one of the few words you consider to be among your favorites in the English lexicon. So if even God doesn't love us unconditionally, why must Israel be loved and supported unconditionally, especially by America? Why must America do the bidding of Israel? And why must American Christians, in a religious, an unconditional and a blindfolded fashion, support Israel? If America doesn't support any of her allies unconditionally, why must Israel have a pass? Is Israel a special category? Israel says, take down Iraq, and America does it. Israel says, I want Libya torpedoed, and America says yes. How many enemies did America have in the Middle East before the founding of the State of Israel? How come majority of the wars America has fought in recent decades have all been in nations close to, if not surrounding, the nation of Israel. Today, Israel will be very happy should America fight Iran, and majority of the senators in America are ready to support this cause and do the bidding of Israel. If not for the interest of the state of Israel, how many wars would the USA fight in the Middle East? For what, and about what? The Middle East is so far away from the USA such that the probability of the Middle Easterners sending a bomb is very low. Whilst Israel is the biggest USA aid receiver on earth annually, the next biggest aid receivers are all nations that surround Israel. Is it given perhaps to appease them so they don't fight with Israel? I can't tell. Why is that the case? So Mr. Prager, even if God doesn't love humanity unconditionally, why must Israel be loved unconditionally? Can Israel, or the IDF, or a Jew lie? It's obvious that Hamas can lie, and they do lie. It's a given. That's why I take every data Hamas offers the world with a pinch of salt. But let me ask you, Mr. Prager, do you believe that Israel or the IDF can lie too? Do you believe a Jew or a rabbi can lie? I didn't say, do you believe could Israel or the IDF or a Jew make mistake or be wrong? I chose my words. I asked, do you believe that Israel or the IDF or a Jew can lie? And when I say a Jew, I even mean an Orthodox Jew. The answer I am sure you will give by word of mouth and in public is yes. But the answer you will give inside you and in your heart is no. This is one of the biggest challenges I have realized with Jews, including you, dear Mr. Prager. I have you on record when you asked the late Chief Rabbi of UK, Rabbi Lord Sachs, that can a rabbi be wrong? My jaw dropped. I thought the rabbis were human beings all these while, and every human can be wrong. For you to ask, can a rabbi be wrong, means you wouldn't even dare assume nor believe that a rabbi can lie. That's why there's no compunction in you to doubt what fellow Jews, especially Orthodox Jews and rabbis, tell you. You don't subject what you hear from your tribe to the same level of honest scrutiny you give to information coming from outside your tribe, especially when those information have a potential of nuking a reputational facade or a long-held belief of your people, the Jews. Here is an example. If Jesus ever existed, and the key word here is if, and if Jesus did so much good, died and rose from the dead, then don't forget that the rabbis you so much trust never wrote that in their books. And even if they ever wrote about him, they were all curses, insults, and blasphemy. In fact, your rabbis said in the Talmud, a book you call the normative in Judaism, and the second holiest work in Judaism, that Jesus is burning in hell in a boiling fecal matter. Maimonides, a medieval rabbi whom Jews hold in high esteem, also cursed Jesus Christ many times in his books and said, may his, Jesus's, bones be grounded in the dust. If it is true that Jesus existed, your rabbis never wrote about him, at least not in a good light. You don't so much believe in history, except when that history was written by Jews, Orthodox Jews especially, or when that portrays Jews and Israel in a good light. The day you, and all Jews alike, will accept that a Jew, a rabbi, the IDF, Israel, etc. can lie, a whole lot will change in the political and theological discourse. It will cause you to hesitate in jumping onto the floor in the defense of the indefensibles about Jews and Israel, your tribe. I cannot do X, therefore no Jew can do X, the blood libel. Having extensively listened to you and read you, dear Mr. Prager, it seems apparent to me that you hold this strange notion that the evil you cannot do, no Jew can. You make references to the blood libel a lot, and you call it the most famous libel. You're convinced that not only that it didn't happen, it just cannot happen. And one of the things you quote to buttress this extraplanetary logic, because the logic doesn't belong here in this world, is that the Torah forbids Jews from eating animal blood, let alone to eat human blood. This logic is akin to me telling you that no Jew can be gay or lesbian because the Torah forbids Jews of homosexuality. But not only do many Jews embrace homosexuality in an inclusive manner, Tel Aviv is the gayest city on earth, as reported by the Times of Israel. Again, I have many videos where a rabbi, after circumcising a baby boy, placed the bleeding penis of the little child in his mouth, and sucked the blood. And while I was patiently waiting for this holy rabbi to spit the blood out of his mouth, he didn't. In fact, he swallowed it. I am very sure that you, Mr. Prager, cannot imagine such a thing, let alone do it, but some Jews can. That is what I want you to understand, that the fact that you cannot do X doesn't mean no Jew can. Here's another example. The first idol the people of Israel bowed down to and worshipped after leaving Egypt, at Mount Sinai, was made by the first high priest, in the person of Aaron. He did not only do wrong, he did evil. If this had been written about Aaron in any other book other than the Torah, such as the Christian's New Testament, you never would have believed it. You would have argued that it's absurd accusation against Aaron. You would have said, it cannot be true. How could a holy man like Aaron, a man who has seen God on the mountains of Sinai, the second in command to Moses, make an idol right at the bottom of Sinai while God and Moses are at the top of it? It cannot be true. Christians made it up. Yes, it sounds impossible to believe, but it sure happened. It therefore astonishes me whenever you quote the Torah or the Tanakh to defend a Jew who is being accused of an evil crime, present or in history, just because the Torah forbids it. I cannot help but wonder why. Did the blood libel happen in history? Did some Jews really kill some Christians and used their blood for matzah? I cannot emphatically say yes or no. And neither can you. We both weren't there. But don't insert the Torah into historical equations to argue that a Jew cannot do it because the Torah forbids it. If you cannot quote the Torah to argue why a Jew cannot be gay simply because the Torah forbids it, then never quote the Torah to argue why a Jew, Jews or some Jews, cannot drink blood because the Torah forbids it. You can't be a Frankist. I understand. But there are many Jews who hell ya can. Even in the Tanakh, when there was a great famine in the days of Elisha, some women killed their babies and ate them. They were Jews, but cannibalistic Jews. If Jews could eat human flesh in the Tanakh, should it be considered incredible that a Jew could do that today? Anybody can do evil, bet it a Jew or Gentile. The fact that you, Dennis Prager, cannot do X, doesn't mean no other Jew on earth can. The logic doesn't follow. From today, hesitate in jumping onto the floor with Torah in your hands to insert. Do Jews control the media? The litmus test for truth is censorship. I have you on record for saying that the litmus test for truth, or the surest way of knowing which side is telling the truth and which side is lying, is to find out the side that is censoring or at least pushing for it. I don't know if this logic exempts Jews and Israeli matters. If it applies to all mankind including Jews, then your logic perfectly gives ample room to worry and to suspect Israel and many Jews. Because aside leftists who often push for censorship on what they consider offensive, Jews and Jewish groups perhaps come close in America and Europe. I have you on record for saying that in the name of free speech, Nazis with their flags and swastikas were allowed to freely march in Skokie, a village in Illinois, even though the village had Jews and Holocaust survivors living in it. Because, according to you, America supports free speech, and that free speech demands that you allow people to say what they want to say even if that speech offends you or is hateful to you. I heard you say that, Mr. Prager. What changed today? That you cannot condemn the censorship of Candace Owens because Jews believe she is saying something that is hurting them. When you heard that she was banned from entering Australia, you cunningly, smartly went about it, neither truly condemning nor supporting her censorship. You cunningly serpentined your way around it. And what was your justification? You argued that one Holocaust survivor, a woman twin, was offended by Candace's comments. Does Australia belong to that woman? Do Jews control Australia too? And if Jews don't want her in Australia, what business should she have going with you to Israel, as you offered? You didn't condemn Nazis marching in Skokie, but you can understand why Candace must be banned from coming to Australia. Dennis, your evolution and sharp departure from what you used to preach shocks me. I know why you supported free speech back then, but are serpentining about it now. Back then, Jews didn't have much control. Today they do. That's why. That's why Candace Owens was banned from YouTube and demonetized, because Jews reported her, and Jews got what they wanted. Alan Dershowitz, your good friend, is on record for saying that the life of Jew haters must be ruined and their finances bankrupted, perhaps imprisoned, and their life made harder and unlivable, etc. The proof that North Koreans and Guatemalans don't have any control on social media and banking space, at least in the Western space, is that if they call for censorship of anyone in the West, their wish will not be granted. That cannot be said of Jews when they call for censorship of someone they don't like, from Twitter to Facebook to Google and to Instagram. They almost always get their wish granted. That is the proof that perhaps, and that is an important word, that Jews control the media space, etc. Because almost whatever they want, they get. If they want Y censored or deplatformed, Why truly will be censored and deplatformed. If Jews want someone's bank account suspended, that happens. Of course, not in all instances, but the validity of their precedents cannot be denied. I have defended Christianity, so Candace should have returned the favor. In your letter to Candace, you categorically implied, if not unequivocally stated, that you expected Candace Owens to return the favor by defending Jews in Israel, since you have been one of the great defenders, if not the greatest defender, of Christianity and Christians in America and beyond. You implied that the reason why you have been scratching the back of Christians in Christianity all these while, if I could call it that, is so that they would return the favor when necessary. But I am not shocked, because I knew that all these while. The difference between you and the other rabbis who harshly kick against anything Christianity and Jesus Christ is that they are bold and honest enough in their rejection of it, at least from a theological standpoint. You aren't, and that's why you don't kick against Christianity. At least not publicly. And the reason, in my view, is more geopolitical. It is something to this effect, that Christians are the majority in America and perhaps the West, so let me present a facade of me liking and loving them so that they can like me, my country and people back, Israel and Jews, in times of need. Prager's work and love towards Christianity and Christians appear altruistic until you dig. Then you will realize that it is very strategic, perhaps even selfish, than many think. Dennis is employed by Christians. Most of his books and Bible commentaries are bought by Christians. Perhaps most of his donors are Christians. Perhaps most of the speaking invites he gets come from Christians and Christian organizations. Americans are Christian majority, etc. What does he have to lose? Why wouldn't he partner with them? Prager knows that the Christians' theology that Jesus is the Messiah and God incarnate is false, irrational and idolatrous. But who cares as long as they will support Israel and Jews? Dear Mr. Prager, yes, Christians have supported Jews and Israel all these years, and I think we should continue to do so, but not blindly or religiously any longer. That is all that Candace is saying, and I totally agree with her. Why there are more attention and cameras on Israel in the Middle East? An outpost of Western civilization. You complain about why Israel, a very tiny nation in Asia, has more cameras and paparazzi than its neighboring nations. It makes you argue that this preoccupation is a sign of Jew hatred or anti-Semitism. Mr. Prager, I have you on record for saying that Israel is an outpost of Western civilization. So now let me ask you, where in the West do you find few cameras and less media attention? I don't even necessarily mean the entire Europe, but Western Europe. There are cameras and media lenses everywhere. Therefore, if you truly believe that Israel is an outpost of Western civilization, and that Israel can participate in games and sports of Western nations, why shouldn't the logic follow that there would be more media attention by default, and not necessarily because of anti-Semitism? Again, Israel claims to be the greatest ally of the USA, a country set on a hill, whose light and brightness are seen everywhere around the world. Israel as a nation annually receives the greatest USA funding and military aid, as well as money from Germany, in billions of dollars. So why shouldn't the logic follow that it will attract cameras? Finally, if one claims to occupy the moral high ground, and that he tells the world how good and moral and decent and pure he is, then he is in essence going to attract more attention. Everybody knows that one side of the divide, alias Hamas, is evil. But the other side, Israel or IDF, keeps telling the world how innocent they are. Well, people then would want to come and observe if it's true. And when they come, they will of course come with their cameras. To avoid media preoccupation, let Israel no more call itself an outpost of Western civilization, and let Israel no more call itself the greatest ally of the United States, and let Israel no more call itself the most moral military in the world, and let Israel stop receiving billions of dollars in aid from USA and Germany annually, and let not Israel have the strongest lobbying group in America, such as AIPAC, etc., and that will solve all that dilemma. It will attract no cameras afterwards. If the excessive cameras found in France, Germany, Spain, USA, UK, Holland, etc. don't mean anti any of those countries, then excessive cameras in Israel cannot be anti-Semitic either. Universalized imputation. Attack on one Jew is an attack on all Jews? Having followed Dennis Prager, and many other Jews and rabbis as well, all these years, it seems quite clear to me that when one Jew is, or group of Jews are, called out on any issue, and I don't even mean physically or undeservedly, all other Jews intentionally misconstrues it, purposefully universalizes it, and makes it appear to be as though it's an attack on all Jews. I call it universalized imputation. Example, Rabbi Shmuley Botich picks a fight with Candace Owens and attacks her on social media. So Candace responds after 2 years of such constant harassment and calls the rabbi filth. Suddenly, that was purposefully misconstrued by many Jews to mean that Candace is calling all Jews filth. Candace, in her recent YouTube episodes, called some Jews Frankists, who are evil pedophiles. Then some Jews strategically twisted that statement, universalized it, and imputed it on all Jews across the globe to mean that Candace Owens thinks that Jews, or many Jews, are Frankists and pedophiles. It is a very powerful and smart strategy that anyone and any group can employ. To the ordinary Jew, calling one Jew out on any issue is akin to calling out all Jews, and calling one American Jew a scumbag on any subject automatically affects a Jew living in a village in Yemen. This is how the average Jew is made to think. This should stop, otherwise you should tell the world so other tribes and races could emulate, such that when one black person fools about and he's called out on it, all blacks will feel insulted and rise to the occasion. Won't that be absurd? Dennis, I have you on record for saying that research shows that black Americans is at the top as the minority in America that will readily murder a Jew. But I knew you didn't mean all blacks. So how come when it is against Jews, it means all Jews? How come when despicable Jews like George Soros and Chuck Schumer are attacked for their evil deeds, suddenly many Jews, especially among the rabbinic, jump up to their defense, and smear the others as anti-Semitic? These Frankists were despicable people, yet you are defending them by reinterpreting history because they're Jews. I am not saying you defend all Jews, but you rarely don't. Therefore I appeal to you, Mr. Prager, and to all Jews, that if you are a communist tribe who would shield every single Jew including the indefensibles and the despicables, let us know. Protest in Israel is not bad, but protest in America is evil. How come protests in America against Israel receive more bashing, punishment and condemnation, especially from Jewish Americans, than protests in Israel by Jews? How come when Jews protest in Israel against Israel, that is somewhat not so bad, but when non-Jews protest against Israel outside of Israel, such as in America and Europe, they are all called evil and anti-Semites? If you are a Jew and you criticize Jews or Israel, you're at worst a self-hating Jew. But if you are a Gentile, a Goy, and you criticize Jews or Israel, you're anti-Semitic. And if you happen to be a college or a university student, according to Jews like Alan Dershowitz, your life must be ruined and rendered miserable. But if similar, if not worse, demonstrations happen on Israeli campuses, that's not so bad. Well, that's double standard. Candace Owens is not anti-Semitic for expressing disagreement on and criticism of Israel, just as newspapers in Israel aren't anti-Semitic for disagreeing with something Israel or Netanyahu does. American and Western college students may not necessarily be anti-Semitic for demonstrating against the bloodshed in Gaza, just as Israeli college students demonstrating against Israel aren't anti-Semites either. If revealing the truth would put Israel in the bad light, don't. Correct me if I am wrong, but in your letter to Candace, you implied, if not unequivocally suggested, that if a truth might show Jews and Israel in a bad light, it shouldn't be said at all. It should by all means be covered. You gave an example of one of Candace's comments and wondered what the need was, since that could spark Christian hatred against Jews, even though you didn't dispute the factuality and the historicity of the comment she made. What a slippery slope that is. How telling is that? This is frightening. Where did you get this logic from? Your religion. How then is Candace not right in positing that Israel, in some sense, is a safe haven for evil criminals, even pedophiliac diasporic Jewish convicts who then get expatriated into Israel in order to cover their evil deeds so not to paint Israel and the Jewish people in a bad light? That logic directly follows. I know why. Because you believe that one Jew equals all Jews, and that revealing the evil of one Jew means revealing the evil of all Jews. If a Jewish pedophile, when discovered, will dim the reputation of Jews across the West, why won't he be expatriated into Israel for cover? If the USS Liberty ship was truly attacked by Jews but when it's known to the world, it will paint Jews and Israel dim, why wouldn't Israel and Jews do anything possible to hide it? Which nations get this pass with America other than Israel? That is why people question the concept of Israel is America's strongest ally. Why should people then tell the truth at all, since truth-telling, in one way or the other, would cause some abrasions in people's reputation and comfort, directly or indirectly. You were, as it were, insinuating that Candace should have covered things like Jewish pedophilia and Jewish evil, since the Catholic Church, which Candace is a member, also has skeletons in its wardrobe? If I got you right, Mr. Prager, you are saying that since Catholics have skeletons in their wardrobe, they should be mindful not to expose that of Jews, since that can trigger a series of exposés. Well, bring it on. And if I could take this to its furthermost conclusion, then this could be a strategy and a tactic for life, that if you don't want the skeletons in your wardrobe exposed, intentionally place or find dirt on other people's hands, usually sexually, especially with minors, so you could manipulate them. Because as long as you have their balls in your hands, they will tread cautiously. I don't know if it's true, but the rumors have it that one Epstein, a pedophile, was a military agent strategically positioned to sexually soil the hands of many American politicians and lawmakers so they wouldn't dare expose the skeletons of the nation of that Epstein. Guilty by association? Kanye West. Dear Prager, you began your letter to Candace by mentioning that you received pressure from fellow Jews to condemn Candace Owens over the sins of Kanye West. In other words, Candace Owens became guilty by association, right? Oh, so if one can be guilty by association, can't one then be righteous by association? The logic must work in both ways. Where did you get all these weird logics from, to argue that since Kanye is supposedly touted as an anti-Semite, which he's not, Candace therefore must either condemn or dissociate herself from him, else she's guilty by her silence and association? Is it not the same Jews that tell us that one will not, or cannot, pay for the sins of the other? Therefore the vicarious death of Jesus is baseless? Don't the Jews tell us that the Son cannot suffer for the sins of the Father, and the Father for the sins of the Son? As close as father and son relationship is, if one cannot pay for the sins of the other, why should Candace pay for the sins of Kanye, who is even just a friend? Has Candace advocated for the murder of Jews? No. Is she saying that the nation of Israel doesn't have the right to exist? No. Is she advocating for the expulsion of Western Jews? Hell no. Does she disagree with some Israeli policies and the behavior of some Jews regarding certain issues? Hell yeah. Does that make her an anti-Semite? Hell no. I mean, if Hitler and Hamas are anti-Semites, then for God's sake Candace isn't. Is that why you have to broaden wide the net of the definition of anti-Semitism to include more others, like Candace Owens? This is to fellow Christians in American Congress and Senate. Now let me address fellow Christians, senators and congressmen and women, in America and the Western world who view the world through the eyes of the Old Testament rather than the New, who read and interpret the Bible not through the eyes of Christ and the Apostles, the New Testament, but through the eyes of Moses, the Old Testament. Here is it. God called us to serve and honor Jesus Christ, not Jews, and not Israel. Why must that be controversial? Why must we support Israel and Jews blindly and religiously? That is all that Candace Owens is saying, and that is all that Christians like me and others are saying, that there's no special blessing or curses you procure over your reaction or non-reaction towards Israel or Jews. Jews are not special than anyone on earth, and their souls have no greater price or value than a Gentile's. How come you don't have a New Testament basis for your unconditional, blindfolded support of Israel and Jews? Even God never had an unconditional love and support for Israel and Jews, and he hasn't changed. Is God a racist, ethnic, or tribalistic? Does he show favoritism? Is he a respecter of persons? Is he not the God of all flesh? Since Israel or Judaism didn't form America, how could Israel possibly make America great? Christianity formed the West, and Jews like Mr. Dennis Prager admit it. What has Judaism formed? At least it was in the world for almost 1,300 years before Christ and Christianity. It couldn't even impact the Middle East, but Christianity has impacted the whole world wherever it went. And the reason is simple. Judaism doesn't have the inherent power to handle death or decay, be it in the life of individuals, societies, nations, and continents. It's inherently impossible to curb death and decay in the hearts of societies, nations, and individuals. That is why it is helpless in the face of societal and moral decay. But that is not the case with Christians and Christianity, because it can cure both the dead and the dying. It cures the decay in the hearts and souls of men. That is why wherever it goes, it brings light to the place, and turns people's hearts around. Judaism perhaps can help prevent the living from coming into death, but it cannot prevent the dead and the dying from coming back into life. It doesn't have that ability. It cannot undo the done. And no religion can, except Christianity. Judaism perhaps can help the pure not to be impure, but it cannot help the impure to be pure. It is a one-direction gear vehicle with no reverse gear to undo the done, and to restore the destroyed. In fact, in so many instances, it even abets and facilitates the decay. That is why the priests in the Old Testament were warned by God not to touch the dead and the impure, because not only does Judaism lack the inherent capability to bring the dead back to life or the impure back to purity, it could be contaminated or corrupted by it. In Judaism, the negative is stronger and more powerful than the positive, and it makes the positive helpless in the face of the negative. And that is why the only way for the positive to survive according to the Old Testament was by isolationism or quarantining the negative, and sometimes even by rendering harsh destruction or punishment to the negative, or to things and people that had or bored them, sometimes even to the tune of capital punishment, burning and stoning. That's why the Old Testament had many capital punishments. Example, Judaism has no cure for the homosexual, and so the only cure for this potentially negative tendency was to destroy it by capital punishment so it doesn't come into contact with society. Remember, I told you it's a one-direction vehicle that has no reverse gear to undo the done. It cannot change hearts, which is the source of all decay and corruption in men and societies. That is, Judaism perhaps might help the living to live, but it cannot help the dead and the dying. And since the world and societies and nations are dead and dying, it can do little to nothing to help in the recovery process. It's only Christianity, Christ, that has this inherent ability to make both the living and the dead to live, and both the pure and the impure to come to purity. And Jesus proved that when he overcame the grave and rose from the dead triumphant. Judaism cannot. In Judaism, the pure is stronger than the impure, such that when the pure comes into contact with the impure overpowers the pure, and the once pure becomes impure. Death is stronger than life in Judaism, and that is why when the living came into contact with the dead overpowers the living. But in Christianity, the pure is stronger than the impure, such that when the pure comes into contact with the impure becomes pure, and the pure still stays pure. Jesus demonstrated it when he touched lepers and hemorrhaging women who were deemed impure according to Judaism. And yet Jesus didn't get contaminated or negatively impacted. So it wasn't that Judaism was preoccupied with life, as I have heard Jews like Dennis Prager say. No. It just didn't, and it still doesn't, have the inherent ability to overcome death and the impure. I just can't. In fact, in many instances, it abets it. Christianity is the salt of the earth, and the light of the world, and it will be greatly missed in this world should it die. How does your food taste like without salt, and how is your day like without light? But that cannot be said of the other religions, including Judaism. I am pretty sure the world won't miss them if they were to disappear tomorrow. But Christianity will be missed greatly should Christianity die. You don't need to be a Christian to realize this. No wonder many Jews today are calling on Christians to go to church and to take the Bible seriously. That's right. But they're dishonest, so they never question themselves over this, that how Jesus, a Jew that our rabbis said is burning in hell in fecal matter, changed the world and formed Western civilization in America, such that the people who truly believe in him are lovely towards us Jews. If Jesus is a God impostor, how could God support a lie? But a typical Jew never asked themselves these questions. That is why Judaism hasn't formed or impacted any civilization yet alive. But check history. Everywhere that Christianity has been, large geographical areas, territories, nations, and even continents are transformed. What has Judaism transformed so far? Nothing. Even the Israel that exists today is an outpost of Western civilization, and Western civilization is a Christian civilization. Judaism didn't form America, and Judaism isn't the foundation of America. Therefore America cannot stand or fall on Judaism. American stands or falls on Christianity, and by how it relates to its foundations and formation, which is Christ. Therefore it's only in the neglect and the abandonment of the foundation, Christ and Christianity, that will endanger the greatness and supremacy of America, not by its treatment of Jews and Israel. One of the verses Mr. Prager likes quoting most to Christian audiences is the promise God gave to Abraham, that I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. From that, Mr. Dennis Prager will go on to say something to this effect, that the day America will abandon Israel or stop blessing Israel, that day will be the beginning of the curse and the downfall of America, and that America is the greatest nation on earth because it has helped the Jews and Israel most. And sadly enough, many American Christians have believed this fear-mongering tactic, and the words have sunk very deep into their subconsciousness, especially you the evangelicals in America. But that is not true anymore, not since the past 2,000 years. In the mind of a typical Jew like Dennis Prager, they believe that this promise to Abraham, this original blessings, is more or less passed on through blood, and that if you carry the DNA of Jacob, this promise automatically applies to you, whether you're Orthodox or atheistic Jew. But of course Christian Jews are excluded, since they're considered not Jewish by the rabbinic. So here's my question. How come the people who don't believe in the concept of original sins, sins carried through the blood of Adam, suddenly believe in the concept of original blessings, blessings carried through the blood of Jacob? Think about it. Of course they don't trace this blessing to Abraham anymore, because that will encompass all the other 7 sons of Abraham including Ishmael, and even Isaac's firstborn son called Esau, since they all had the DNA of Abraham. This tells you that what counts is not your having the DNA of Abraham. What counts is whether or not you carry the promise. Again, this verse, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you, is referring to other people's reaction towards Jews or Israel. Now flip it. If God will curse you when you curse a Jew, what will God do to a Jew who curses you? Will God curse him, or that won't matter? Oh, you think Jews don't curse and harm others, and rip others off? You think a Jew cannot cheat, steal, murder, and commit evil crimes against others, individuals and nations? That scripture has been obsolete for the past 2,000 years. All the promises God made to Abraham are fulfilled in Christ Jesus, and you procure them by how you view, treat, react, cooperate, respond and relate to Jesus Christ. Now let me tell you why America is the most blessed country on earth. America has printed and spread more Bibles, God's Word, across the globe than any nation on earth. America has advanced the course of Christ and Christianity than any nation on earth. I won't even mention about social intervention acts such as building schools and hospitals and giving scholarships in third world countries. America has sent more missionaries and revivalists to almost every part of the world to advance the cause of Christ. No country on earth has been more hospitable and friendly to foreigners and immigrants from all walks of life than America. No country on earth ever comes second close to these achievements. That is why America is the greatest, and not because of the Jews. If Jews and Judaism can make America great, or make another nation great today, why haven't they themselves been? God doesn't bless you or curse you because you bless or curse Jews. It doesn't exist anymore. God blesses or curses you based on your attitude towards Christ. And secondly, since God created all humans equally in His sight, if you do good to anyone who needs it, God blesses you. You don't get a double blessing because you did it to Jews. It doesn't work anymore. At least not since the past 2,000 years when Jesus Christ walked the earth. You don't get any more blessing doing good to Israel and Jews than you get doing good to Guatemalans. No nation has a pass before God now. Unfortunately, fellow evangelicals have drunk the Kool-Aid that almost nothing can change their minds. So let me ask you this, American Christians. If Moses and Jesus were both having a seminar in your city, whose will you attend? Or put in another form, whose words do you cherish most as supreme? Moses' words, i.e. the Torah, or Jesus' words, i.e. the New Testament? Where in the New Testament did Jesus or any of the apostles ever say that in order for you to be blessed or great as a nation, you must bless the nation of Israel, forget about helping Israel blindly? Nowhere. The Jews, such as Mr. Prager, will quote Spain and Germany as examples of why they're not blessed, or became unblessed, because they kicked Jews out or harmed Jews. Germany is still arguably the powerhouse in Europe today. Spain too is very great in so many ways. Sadly, they don't say same about UK, even though they also kicked them out. Why? Because they know that UK is still great, at least for now. These shackles must be broken off your hands, and the fetters off your feet, my dear evangelicals. How come if you were to count the 5 greatest civilizations, nations, kingdoms or empires that ever existed on planet Earth, Israel won't be a part? If Israel and the Jews in Judaism have the inherent ability to make others, such as America, blessed and great, Why is it not blessed and great for the past 3,500 years? Why has it depended and profited, as it were, from other nations and civilizations almost throughout their entire history till date? Why has it been oppressed many times in their history, and kicked out of over 100 nations? The Bible says the lesser is blessed by the better. America has been better to bless all mankind, including Jews, and it was formed by Christians. It seems to me that Jews flourish under the shadow of true Christianity. Today, some of these Jews, such as Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager, are strongly beseeching backslidden Christian youths and adults alike to consider taking Sunday church attendance seriously again, because they have realized that it was better for them at the time when many people attended church on Sundays, even though they have no respect for the Jesus Christ the Christians go to church to worship. Some do say so with their mouths in public that they somewhat respect Jesus Christ, but in their heart of hearts, they despise him. Ben Shapiro called Jesus the Jesus on Joe Rogan's show. I am sure he won't call Buddha the Buddha, or Muhammad the Muhammad, or Krishna the Krishna. This is how much they spit on Jesus Christ. But to their dishonesty, they are calling on Christians to go back to church. Nevertheless, some of the rabbis are waiting for the collapse of Christianity, especially in the West. I have Rabbi Tovia Singer on record for saying that his greatest joy will be to see Christianity perish. And trust me, he is not the only one who not just only holds this belief, but also work towards its attainment in various ways and forms. So what did Jews do? They popularized, if not manufactured, the term Judeo-Christian civilization. How smart of them! How could they give all the credit to Christians? No way! Honest Jews and honest Christians who take their logic to its logical conclusion don't use that term. I am one of them. I would like to ask Mr. Dennis Prager one day that if we had time machine that could carry both him and me back into history, back to Spain during the Inquisition, and back to Germany during the Holocaust, and back to all the supposed evils that Jews claim were executed on them by Christians in Christianity, would he still use the phrase Judeo-Christian civilization? Things are good now in America and the West for Jews, comparatively speaking, and by way of attaching themselves to this success story, popularized this term called Judeo-Christian. It's a farce. Now think of it this way too. If the West was formed by the so-called Judeo-Christian values, why then do they blame all the evils of the civilization only on the Cristiano but not on the Judeo also? Think about it. If a table with 2 legs carrying eggs fall, why then do we blame just one leg of the table for the harm done? Whenever there are failure in the West against Jews, the typical Jew will say that must be the fault of the Christians. But when there's success, they go, oh, that is Judeo-Christian. The Judeo part was alive about 1,300 years before Christianity, yet it impacted almost nothing in this world, at least not that which exists till date. My second refutation of this Judeo-Christian civilization farce was gleaned from a logic of Mr. Dennis Prager himself in his debunking of the notion that slaves built America. Dennis Prager calls this notion erroneous and perhaps preposterous, in that South American countries, such as Brazil, had more slaves than America did, by far. Therefore, reason enshrines that if slaves do have the inherent ability for building beautiful nations and civilizations like America did, then slaves should have replicated that in South America. In other words, if South America had slaves and the United States of America also had slaves, but the United States of America was able to build a beautiful nation but the South Americans didn't, then the magic wasn't the slaves. It means that something more than slaves built America. And Dennis Prager is right. But then let me use his logic on him. If Jews had the Torah and Christians also had the Torah, but the Jews built almost nothing and the Christians built almost everything, how then could the magic be the Torah, just as the magic couldn't be slavery? What then do Christians have that the Jews don't have? It is Jesus Christ and his teachings, the New Testament. This is the only variable between Christians and the Jews, and it is not the Torah. But I know what Dennis Prager would do. He would redefine the terms to suit his logic. Therefore, my dear Mr. Prager, what caused the magic in America and the West wasn't the Judeo or the Torah. It was Jesus Christ, something the Christians have that you Jews don't. He caused all the magic you see in the West, not Jews, not the Torah and not the Judeo. It was the New Testament Bible. Fellow Christians, let me read a scripture to you from Galatians 6 verse 10. Paul says, "So then, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are of the household of faith." I am sure many American Christians, especially the evangelicals, have never seen this verse in their Bible. And even if they do see it, most of them would pretend it doesn't mean what it says. I am sure if Apostle Paul was alive today, many American evangelicals would have called him a heretic, perhaps an anti-Semite. Imagine a Caucasian Anglo-Saxon guy living in the Northern Hemisphere, in the United States of America, trying to out-Semite a Semite, and trying to out-Jew a Jew like Saul of Tarsus. In the above verse, Paul wrote that we are to do good to all mankind, but especially to those in the household of faith, meaning fellow believers in Christ. Not the household of Jews, but the household of Christians. How mindful are you of Palestinian Christians in Gaza? How supplicative are you in your prayers for them in this hard season? Do you devote the same amount of time and effort for Palestinian Christians in Gaza just as you do for Israel and the Jews? Pastor John Hagee and Kufi, do you marshal the same forces for Christians in Gaza just as you do for Israel and the Jews? I am sure many of you don't. My dear American Christians, senators and congressmen, before you sponsor or aid the dropping of bombs on any nation or building anywhere in the world, you must think twice, and then think again, and also ask yourself if it is worth it, and especially if there are Christians in that country, area, or building. Anything short of that is against the Christian values and belief as mentioned in our Bible, the New Testament. Your religious and blindfolded support might be Jewish, but it certainly won't be Christian. Some evangelical pastors like Pastor John Hagee and organizations such as Kufi are such theological errors of our time. These evangelical clergies organize what they call a Night to Honor Israel, a program that has no theological basis whatsoever both in the New and the Old Testaments. It is all a political and a tribal hubris. During such gatherings, they shower resounding applause to Jews just for being Jews, and pray for Israel, and donate money to its cause. I have no problem helping Jews, just as I have no problem helping Guatemalans. They're all human beings created in the image of God, and no one is superior or better in God's eyes over the other. This Kufi's Night to Honor Israel gatherings is something that cannot be traced to the Bible, yet the ignorance of certain clergies in positions of power and influence makes it appear as though God supports it. My final words to Prager. It seems that from a distant, you would love Jews, but the moment you begin to pay a close attention, and begins to research outside the public narrative, you wouldn't like what you see about them, and that they're not really what they claim they are, the moral high horse that they ride. All it takes is to look carefully. Dear Dennis, Candace Owens is never an anti-Semite. And your false characterization of her does nothing other than engender more coldness in the hearts of many towards Jews and Israel. It does nothing but create more ex-Israel fans. You have changed from the free speech values you held and preached years back. Yes, it seems you still believe in free speech, but not really, especially when it affects your tribe, the Jews. It seems to me, moreover, that you appeared to be a centurion of free speech in those early years for strategic reasons, in that, your tribe, the Jews, were somewhat at the disadvantage. But now that they call the shots almost everywhere, and now that they could get almost whoever they want canceled and deplatformed on social media and academia, and now that almost every wish of theirs in Congress and Senate could be granted, thanks to AIPAC, you no longer strongly believe in free speech. You still do though, but with a but attached, especially when it affects your tribe. It's like Ben Shapiro, who said that facts don't care about your feelings, but never applied it when it affected his tribe. I want you to know that Jews don't have any special pass before God today, and they shouldn't have any special pass before men on any subject on earth. It's not true anymore concerning the notion that you are a chosen tribe. It expired a long time ago for the past 2,000 years. In fact, I believe you are unchosen or dischosen. It doesn't matter if you have the DNA of Abraham or not. All that matters is whether or not you have the promise, and that is referring to Jesus Christ. And guess what? He was a Jew. I hope you don't call me an anti-Semite. Yours truly, God has common sense.